Hi, and welcome to this bonus episode of the Magnify podcast. Last night, we had our Zoom book club for the Christ child, and we invited everyone in our community to participate. So we had a group of women gather together and had a discussion led by Mindy Brown to share our insights from Adam Miller's The Christ Child. And we want to release that audio for you to listen to today. Stay tuned for next time when we will be doing The Practice of Stillness by Carrie Scarda, and there will be another Zoom for you to join. Okay, now on to this episode.
I'm Mindy, and I am a Magnify contributor. I am a writer. I wrote Eve and Adam that was released 4.5 years ago, and I have a second book coming out about the temple in a few months. Yeah, that's exciting. It's called An Endowment of Love. I have a master's degree from Duke Divinity School and have been teaching a temple class for about 4 or 5 years on campus at BYU as a Stake Relief Society president, and am a grandma of 5 cute little boys, and just pretty similar to all of you. Love to read, love to study, love to dig into things, love to go down rabbit holes. So I'm a huge fan of Adam Miller's. I've been a long time follower of his. I think he's pretty brilliant. So I'm excited to talk about this tonight.
Oh, that's a great way to, thanks, Mindy. I have read this book already like 2 times through. I'm so thrilled. I think we're going to have so much fun chatting with it today.
Okay. So, look, there's my first question for you. So here's what I want to do. I want to start warming up all your fingers and getting you comfortable with the chat button. So I've got 2 one-word questions for you. The first is, what's one word that captures the essence of being like a child? So go. It's like a speed round. Type it into your chat and they'll all pop up. And let's see what you come up with. Creative. Love it, Ramona. Thank you. Yes. Believe. Great. Tammy. Bright. Oh, yeah. Good one, Sarah. What else? Unreserved. Good. Thank you, TB. Innocence. Oh, thanks. Energy. Yeah. Open. Curious. Good. These are great ones. Any others? Yeah, coming up here. Trusting. Super. Yeah, lots of those. Loving. Yes. I mean, these really echo Adam's ideas as well. Fresh. Yeah, super good. Great. Some of the others he throws out are pliable, vulnerable, generous, awestruck, open. I think we had open up there. Playful, conscious, perceptive, attentive. Funny because some of those we don't always liken to a child. We don't necessarily think they're the most attentive sometimes, but he makes a good case for how attentive they are. But so now here's my second one, and I don't think there's a slide for this one, but my second question, speed round, is, in one word, what gets in your way of being those things? As an adult, what's the adult essence that detracts? Okay, let's see what you come up with here. Duty, fear, definitely fear, scared. Yep. I'd throw out busy or rushed, guarded, uptight, time. Yep. Prejudice, great one. Jaded, yes. Any others there? Tasks, to-do lists, right? Busyness, yeah. Yeah, so I think in a nutshell, to me, that's like the heart of this, the tension in this book is the adult realities, all of these impacted by rules over life, busyness, tasks, all these things. And then how, we want to be childlike in terms of our vision and how we see and experience and live life. Before we go on a little bit, let me tell you a little bit about Adam. I was doing a little bit of research, and I know a lot of the things just because, like I said, I'm a fangirl. And so I'll tell you a few things. So I've been a fan of his since reading Letters to a Young Mormon. which I remember it was probably almost 10 years ago when that book came out. And a dear friend of mine, who a lot of you are familiar with, Tammy Runya, shared that book with me. And it was the first edition, and it was this tiny little book, and it fit in our purses. And Tammy and I kept it in our purses so that we could pull it out just constantly. And like, if you want to see, I wish I had it with me, but I'm traveling, so I don't have it here. But I mean, talk about a marked up book. I think I read that book inside out. It's such an insightful, thoughtful book, and really taps into the mind of a child. It's interesting that that's where he started, and where he kind of broke through into bigger LDS readership, I would say, because he's written a lot of academic things as well. But anyway, that's an outstanding one. And then I was looking through some notes from a book group I attended with him last March, where he spoke at a friend's book group about his book, Original Grace, which, if you're not familiar with, is also totally outstanding. And there are two things that I thought I'd share from that. One of his favorite words that he said over and over and over again, and I think it totally rings through in this book too, is participate. And I think we'll talk a bit about just participating in life from a child's perspective. And then the most quotable line that I jotted down, and I've loved ever since he said this, was, mortality is not a punishment. Mortality is the prize. This is the gift. You win. And I think that really too is captured in the childlike essence of just loving life and loving each day's adventure, right? Adam has a really good dry wit that sometimes is a little hard to read. He seems a little bit serious and kind of intimidating because his intellect is intense, but actually he's enormously down to earth, very personable, but he is an incredibly deep thinker. He teaches currently at Collin College in McKinney, Texas, which is near the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and he's a professor of philosophy. But I was surprised to learn that he also directs the college's honors program. And I had always kind of thought this was a small school, but Texas, everything in Texas is huge. So it's actually huge. It has 58,000 undergraduates in a public community college. So it's big. So he's busy, I'm thinking. He and his wife, Gwen, have 3 children, and he got his undergrad at BYU Provo and his master's and PhD from Villanova University. And he is an award-winning author and writer and essayist. So he just really is brilliant. And we are just enormously lucky that he's writing books for the general LDS population, I think, because he's got so many great thoughts. So let's dig in a little bit. I've got a couple of thoughts that I thought I'd start with, but let me, before doing that, share 2 kind of general questions I want you to be thinking about. And anytime you think of something that responds to these, let's share. The first is, what have you kept thinking about since you read this book? What's the image that just has really stuck with you, or the thought? Because what has lasting value like that can be really an interesting thing to learn about from each other. Another is, what is an actual example of something that you've done differently in the last couple of weeks since you read this? Where did it actually give you pause and you thought, I'm going to do this a little differently than I otherwise might have, because something came to mind from the book? Any responses to either of those right out of the gate that either of you are catching or thinking about? One that I'll just share, and maybe some of you will remember this one too, is the gift of regifting the horse to his mom. Was that not the greatest thing ever? I love that regifting the horse, that his dad went to the effort and work to find that same horse that she had loved and had to give up and got it back for her. I think that's one of the most romantic gifts I've ever heard of, actually. I thought that was pretty fabulous.
Mindy, will you say the question again, and I'll put it in the chat?
Oh, sure. Okay, so my first one is, what have you kept thinking about? Like, what has stuck with you, an image or a thought? And the second is, what have you actually done differently since you read it? Do you have a tangible example of something that like you stopped in your tracks and were like, no, I'm going to do it like this because I read that book. Okay. So yeah, those would be things I think we'd all
Okay.
love to
So
hear.
Melissa said how children view and relate to the world around them. And TB said all like she's quoting, I think, the book, all like love is often difficult and inconvenient. I
Yes.
love it.
Oh, and I love this part that she's sharing. This is one that stuck with me too. If you think you can find God without living in awe, without worship, good luck. Filled with awe, the whole world, including you, is born again. Everything is seen again for the first time. Everything is new. Yeah, in fact, I wanted to bring up this and talk about his notion of equating worship with awe. And so let's pose that and throw that out. Do you agree? Is worship awe? Is it bigger than awe? Is it less than awe? Is that a valid equation that he's drawn for us? Has it made you think about worshiping differently when you when you read the chapter about awe that was just, I thought, so enlightening. I loved that one so much. What stood out to you? Let's hear some thoughts there. Okay, TB says, awe draws my heart towards God. Yeah, definitely. What else? He also says about awe, a couple things he said was, awe opens the mind's aperture wide. I think that's a fabulous way to describe it when you think of like a camera and opening that up and getting more exposure. He also points out that awe magnifies. I think that's so interesting. I mean, here we are, the Magnify community, right? And really, the more I thought about it, not only does awe magnify, but imagination magnifies and love magnifies. Like we could really spend some time talking about how each of those is a magnifier. Um, let's see. Melissa says I've started researching plane tickets to go spend time with with the little grandkids. Love it. Totally love it. And Tammy says awe provides more thinking and pondering.
Mindy, something for me that stuck out. I know we're still on the worship is awe, but just what I've kept thinking about since reading this is the wise men. I loved that they were kind of a main character of this story. I wonder if anyone else felt that way or had like new thoughts too, but it made me want to be numbered among them. Like there were so many, their characteristics were so those same three that he pointed out, awe, imagination, and love. Like they were the
Mhm.
characters that got it, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree. I I love thinking about how the term epiphany, in a very literal sense, connects with the wise men's arrival, and um, there is the sense of awe and wonder that links to their following that star and all of that. I think that's awesome. Um, Hold on, a few others comments we're getting here is Hannah says that she's been thinking about trying to forgive more. And Hannah says every true act of repentance, at least in part, is like a childlike act of imagination. I think those are really great points, and those are some ideas I kind of wanted to draw out as well. Okay, so one thing that I thought about too is how much he's talking about gifts through this, um, through the whole book. You know, there's a lot about various ways of thinking of gifts and the Christmas photos and things. He often is talking about the gifts that went with each of those Christmases or whatever. But I was thinking a lot, and one of the things that really stuck with me was the idea that mortality's greatest gift in some ways is time, and how crucial time is to awe and imagination and love. That all of them really depend on taking the time to be present and to slow down and just soak in or almost like based in the experience. And I think that's something that children are phenomenally skilled with, is living in a little bit of a timeless sense, right? Like there aren't many 4 or 5-year-olds who stop to ask you what time it is. Like they don't even care, right? It's unless it's dinner time or ice cream time, like it doesn't really matter, right? And I think time is an intriguing thing to think about. And um, again, I remind you of that quote from the book group where he says, "Mortality is not a punishment, it's a prize. This is the gift. You won." And I think so much of it has to do with having the time to become, the time to change, to be transformed, to learn. All of those are time words. Time to be curious. Yeah, like Tammy says, that's awesome. Um, oh, and Melissa, we missed her comment there that worship is more structured and formalized, and awe seems more informal or spontaneous. Let's come back to that idea because I think we could dig in a bit more there. Um, Oh, Holly, the mortality quote was actually from a book group I attended that Adam spoke at, and that was something that he said. And maybe we can get that in the
Yeah,
chat there. But
I can try and find it.
okay, um, okay. Let's see. Oh, we've got so many great comments popping up here. Um, let's try. Let's try to stay on task here, like follow a thread for just a second, so we don't have everybody going all over a bit. But I'm wondering, do you guys see, and does anyone want to articulate or elaborate on kind of this common thread that time is an inherent piece of this brilliant trifecta of awe, imagination, and love? Do you see time as a common thread? Is there another common thread that jumps out at you? It's a quiet bunch. Don't be bashful, guys. You don't want to just listen to me. We want to hear your brilliant thoughts.
Sorry, Ramona had something maybe to say too.
Is that okay?
Of course.
Yeah, I didn't see your hand go up. Sorry, Ramona.
It never showed up. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Oh, just call up. Just start
Yeah,
talking.
just jump in.
Yeah.
I was just going to tell today, I think that's what's so fun about being a grandma is you have time that parents don't have. And
Yes.
today I was watching Ollie and we were waiting for his brothers to come home on the bus. So we were outside and he likes to sit in the back of my car, where I lift the trunk, but it's full of a project I'm working on right now. So I said, there's not much room back there. So then he wanted to get in the car and he got in, the little car seat that he doesn't ever get to sit in, that his brothers can, because he's still in the other one. And he said, let's go, Grandma, let's go somewhere. And I said, well, where are we going? And he said, Walmart. And so then I just drove the car, and I said, what are we going to get at Walmart? And we just had more fun just playing, and I think that's a gift that grandparents have that parents sometimes don't have as much.
Yeah. I think you're so right. I've thought so many times since reading this that grandparenting naturally pushes your arc back to slowing down, right?
Mm-hmm.
That middle phase, life just requires you to just be a little bit busier, more hurried, more focused on what tasks, what you need to do, your duties and responsibilities. But you get into that grandparent stage and you really can slow down. And it's just completely magnified by the fact that you have these little people around you who you just adore more than anything imaginable, right? And they are so full of wonder and questions and awe, and it's so easy to be sucked into it. And like you said, just imagining playing dress up, playing whatever, it just unleashes a part of you that in my case felt like it had been decades since I really let loose with that type of play. And it's so liberating. It's so easy, I think, to let go of all those constraints that for 20 years of parenting seemed so important to me. They're out the window because I get to give the kids back when that responsibility comes, right? But when they're with me, I can just play, and it's so valuable. It's so valuable. Yeah, thanks, Ramona. What else? Who else has some thoughts about that?
I have one. I kind of go the other direction. So not to get into long details, but my husband is disabled and time is short. And so mortality is a gift right now. And what we do and what we think about and how we react to what's going on in our daily lives is more thoughtful. Time is of an essence in a sense for us, and we want to make the most of it. So I'm on a different side. I love the grandkids analogy, but I think we do take when hard things come our way, time is part of what we have and what we have to endure, and it's how we endure it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. There's so many paradoxes with time. TB points out one here that it's so interesting that it's so essential to our growth and learning, but all things are before the Lord, and he's in a timeless sort of state. And so this is kind of a mortal construct that we're working in. And so there's a lot of paradox there. And Hannah points out also that, we often think I don't have time. But what we really then have to do, because it's a constraint, is choose and make the time to love or imagine or sit in awe and just open our minds to bigger ideas. To just slow down and have joy with little ones is so huge, right? And I think, to me, it just felt like, that's sort of the obvious idea of the book, is that Christmas time is so magical because we suddenly start to see life for just this brief period of a month or 6 weeks or whatever through a child's eyes. And it's that idea of tapping into it and making it last, and not just at Christmas time, right? Being able to do that. So yeah, I think that's a big one. Let's think too about, he brings up the quote from Proverbs 29:18, where there's no vision that people perish. And I spent a lot of time thinking about that quote as well. I think we have a slide for that, Anna, if you can find that. But I think that's a really neat idea, because he's talking about seeing through the eyes of a child. And that's like, when you reframe this vision idea, that's a big deal, right? That depending on how we see things, if we can't see bigger, like widening our aperture, like we talked about earlier, that there could be some potential perishing involved there if we're limiting ourselves instead of expanding ourselves. And one of the things I was thinking about as I pondered on that the last week or two is how often we use the word promise, as in a land of promise, or like, oh, this student has so much promise, or this is such a promising idea or concept or whatever. And a lot of times what we actually mean when we say that is possibilities or potential. And isn't it interesting that if we were just to define promise, that's not the definition we would give. And yet we use this version of promise that really means possibilities and potential so frequently in a spiritual sense. And in fact, there's one little story that I'll just briefly share. It's one that I heard many years ago, and I just love it. And I've tried to research it, and I've actually read about it a few other spots, but I don't have a hard copy book to show you where this is from. But it's somewhat anecdotal, but I think there's some evidence to it. In the mid 1800s, when hot air balloon flight was beginning to be figured out, this was happening in France, right? And I guess it was early 1800s, because Benjamin Franklin was spending a lot of time in France at this time. And the story goes that Benjamin Franklin was there on the day of the first launch of the first successful hot air balloon ride. And there was a huge crowd gathered. This was a huge deal that France got this first. There was a big race between England of who was going to figure out hot air ballooning first. And it's told that someone in the crowd was acting very cavalier about this and said, and in Benjamin Franklin's overhearing, said something like, "What's the big deal? Like, so what?" And Benjamin Franklin's response was, "What good is a newborn baby?" And I just love that. I think so often things come up where there's so much potential and promise and possibility. I mean, really, it's imagination, right? It's like the potential for creativity that I often hear that line in my mind. What good is a newborn baby? Well, obviously, like everything good, right? I mean, it's unlimited what a child could do in a lifetime. And so that's really caused me pause with this proverb, where there's no vision, that people perish. I wonder, did any of that jump out to you as you read that? Did you have any thoughts about that type of vision in terms of seeing and experiencing life through childlike eyes? TB points out that Elder Kieran has recently really tried to expand our vision of who God is and how he loves us. I think that's exactly right. That's a great observation.
Mindy, I think it's just interesting too that Adam just has pointed out in this book that children see more. Like they have more vision, more expansiveness. I guess that felt so counterintuitive to what we're told, and I'm so glad that it's flipped on its head. For like I'm learning so much more. I feel like the scriptures of suffer the children mean so much more after this. So I don't know if that's exactly what you're going with, but I think vision is, we need to be, not only do we need to see what a child's potential can be, but also see with the eyes of a child too. Yeah.
Did you guys enjoy the psychologist that he repeatedly quoted from? The child psychologist that was sharing a lot of those kind of counterintuitive ideas. Yeah, Holly, do you have a comment there?
Yeah, no, it was Gopnik. He was phenomenal. I love it. Okay, can I just ask you guys, this book, he is such a hard author. I love him, but I am doing a Relief Society lesson on Sunday, and I've been working so hard on this, but I feel like this is such a hard topic. I think I might lose my women in it.
Yeah, I do think, I mean, he's a philosopher through and through, right? And a lot of times he sort of builds a proof that if you can't follow step by step, it can suddenly start to swirl a little bit. But I think this book, I was particularly excited about how it was a little bit shrunken down and simplified from some of his others. So I don't know. I mean, maybe if you pick one angle.
Yeah, it is. I have been working so hard on this, which is why I wanted so desperately to join this meeting tonight, just to hear what everybody was saying.
Yeah.
I love him. He is hard though.
Or sorry. Yeah. Is it Emily that's talking? They're asking which conference talk are you using?
I am not using it. So we're just doing a very brief little. So no, it's totally up for me to choose. I did pull in an old conference talk from 2022 where Elder, who is it? Talks about awe.
From 2022.
But really the whole lesson is very short. And then we're just doing we're just bringing in the young women and the sisters. And so it was just kind of a little thing, but I have a feeling it's too deep.
One thing I might suggest, Holly, and just briefly, so we don't go too much off topic here, but Elder President Uchtdorf at the time gave that excellent talk called You Matter to Him, where he talks about the paradox of man, that we're nothing and yet we're everything to God. That might be a great connecting point.
That might be a great connection.
Awe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, just a suggestion there.
Don't let me. I'm loving the discussion. Keep going.
Oh, good. Other common threads to think about. And this came up in Ramona's comment to the first question about single words, where you mentioned, Ramona, creativity. How do you see awe, imagination, and love all being woven together in the idea of creativity? Because I think that's a thread that Adam's trying to weave through this, that is just a little bit of a stretch in some ways. But I think it's really an enlightening way of expanding our way of thinking about creativity way beyond artistry or anything like that. I'm wondering if any of you have thoughts about creativity as it relates to this trifecta. Okay, I feel like
something.
Oh yeah. Yeah, who is
Okay.
Anna?
Yeah, hi. I have been thinking a lot about creativity lately because I mean I studied art in college, and so like that concept of creativity versus like creativity in the application of life and how we like are creative in our understanding of spirituality and things like that is so different. But something that I have kind of like tied the pieces together to is like in college when I decided I wanted to study art, like I took this class where it was at BYU Idaho, right? So it was in religious context, but we kind of learned about how like in being creative, you're taking pieces of things that already exist and you're putting them together to create something that's organized, that communicates, it elicits emotion or sends a message of some kind. And I think spiritually, like sometimes in order to solve my problems or get spiritual revelation, I kind of have to be creative. I have to take pieces of the gospel and apply the atonement in places that I don't think to apply it. And that's how I grow spiritually, by being creative. Because I found that like if I just did this, like if I just study the scriptures the same every time, yeah, I'm gonna learn. But if I challenge myself to think about them differently or to ponder or to do it in a different place or to, you know, like listen to something different or whatever, like trying to look at it from different angles and put together the puzzle a little differently every time, I feel like has caused me to expand spiritually. And in some cases, I think when I experience spiritual trials, I have to get creative in how I respond to them, right? Like if it's a challenge that I've never been met with before, I'm gonna have to pause and look at all the pieces of the problem and like try and figure out what to do next. And that forces a lot of like spiritual and I think maybe like temporal creativity in a sense. I don't know. Those are just my thoughts.
Yeah. Oh yeah. TB has her hand up. Go ahead, TB.
Thank you. One thing that happened to me kind of a number of years ago is I was studying a bunch of different gospel threads, and all of a sudden it all kind of came together to a new understanding. And it was really exciting. And then my children are grown now, but in my mind, I had this image of a video or a clip from like a Lego whatever video game where they come up to a pile of bricks and then they move their hands and it becomes this wonderful, useful, necessary thing. And the impression I received was that like Heavenly Father was like saying, yes, like you've been studying all these things and look at how they've come together. But the thing I felt most was just this joy, this joy that Heavenly Father was sharing with me, and like this happy, like also almost like mirthful joy. And so when I think about creativity, whether I'm making something or thinking something, that there's a lot of joy that we share with our Heavenly Father through that.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that. That's a really great example. I actually came across a poem this week that I think you guys will enjoy in this vein. So let me read you this. It's called Creation Continued, and it's by Carolyn Pearson. She writes this. She writes, I will continue to create the universe today right where God left off. Little pockets of chaos somehow survived the ordering, and I feel moved to move upon them, as in the beginning the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. I will move upon my backyard today, and the weeds will be subdued, and the flowers can grow, and it will be good. I will move long distance upon a broken heart, and leave a little balm, and it will be good. Oh, I will move upon the hunger of my children with salad and spaghetti, which is Emily's favorite, and it will be good, and even they will say so. And I will move too upon their minds, leaving a little poem or an important thought, and that will be even better, though they won't say so. I will move upon birth defects and cancer with $5 or $10 checks to help the scientists who are battling the big chaos. And I will move upon world hunger with a $24 check for little Marilza in Brazil, and it will be good. I will move upon the kitchen floor and the dirty laundry and a blank piece of paper, and at the end of the day have a little creation to show. And the evening and the morning are my 18,096th day, and tomorrow will start another one. And here is chaos, and there is chaos, and who knows if creation will finally be done. So anyway, I love that. I think that captures some kind of fun ideas that maybe we don't always draw in when we're thinking about creativity, but like when we're thinking about imagination, he brings up repentance and forgiveness. And I think imagination is something we can really tap into when we're trying to be more forgiving or trying to feel repentant or sorry for something and trying to change personally, or love in general, when we're just being really patient and imagining that someone we want so badly to have an improved relationship with has the potential, that promise of possibility and change and growth. And I think in all those ways, imagination might play a much bigger part of our daily lives than we tend to think it does, right? I think those are kind of some neat big ideas. I don't know if any of that rings true. Let me read here what iPhone is writing. Pondering can bring creativity. I don't know who it was, but one of the brethren talked about our being born to create. I think that might have been President Uchtdorf gave a great talk about that. This made me think, how do I create, and do I rely on direction from the Spirit as to how and what I create? We create relationships. Do I create rich relationships or sorrow? Those are deep thoughts there. I think those are really beautiful points. Sharon Eubank gave a wonderful talk about, I think it was called The Glue to Connect and Glue to Create, something about glue. And she expands these same sort of ways that this comment is pointing towards creativity, that's kind of a big, deep idea. Any other thoughts about creativity? I think it's fun to think about how much children love to be creative. And I think it was Vincent van Gogh who was famously quoted as saying that every child is an artist, right? And it's a sad thing when they start to grow up and suddenly don't think of themselves as artists. It's something that it seems like the default is you start life feeling like you're an artist. That's something that's worth aspiring to, right? Okay, let's see a couple of other thoughts we might bring up. Here's a great quote that I loved in the book. Let's see if any of you thought about this one. Oh, Picasso was the quote. Thank you, not Vincent, Picasso. Adam writes, some gifts take a very, very long time to have their intended effect. How do you feel about that? Can you think of any gifts that you've received or given that took a very, very long time to have their effect? I thought that was a beautiful, thought-provoking comment. I also wonder how you liked him starting each chapter with reminiscing very carefully over a photo, a Christmas photo. How do you ladies feel about Christmas photos? Do you like to go back and look at them closely? Oh, TB's pointing out to my previous thought there. about some gifts take a very, very long time to have their intended effect. She says, I've seen this in my children. Some of their more challenging traits are now wonderful strengths. That's a super application of that, I think, when we think about spiritual gifts. Sometimes they take a while to evolve and be appreciated. Okay, let's think for a minute about Christmas photos and reminiscing with photos. Is that something you enjoy doing? Tammy says, pictures are part of the awe for me, looking at past memories.
I think looking at pictures invokes, like, especially of pictures of my childhood, invoke that same magical feeling, right? And to kind of tie it to your first question about gifts, like, I think back on a lot of my Christmas memories, and I realize now that a lot of the magical feelings I had were due to experiences that my parents, like especially my mom, created and fostered for me so that I could feel the spirit and think about Jesus at Christmas time as a kid. And my mom was giving me that gift, and it worked, but like I feel the full intended effect now as, you know, as a young adult. And looking back at those pictures allows me to like reconnect with that magical time, but also feel like a deeper gratitude for my mom and everything that she did and the testimony of Christ that she had. And she like lived so emboldenedly so that I could feel it now.
I love how you wove those two together. That's really great. That's a great observation and point. And I think you're right. Some of those, the intended effects of gifts, it's in remembering and reflecting and reminiscing that you can start to appreciate them. I think that's awesome. Melissa, do you have a thought there?
So with regards to the photographs, all of our children are adopted, and two of them are closed private adoptions, two were through foster care. But even when I was a teenager, I loved taking photographs, loved trying to capture the moment, the memory, or nature, you know, whatever. But when the kids started coming along, I started creating photo albums, not the real fancy ones that are, you know, super elaborate with all the fancy papers, but just photo journaling, getting the photos on a page and, you know, like, this is the occasion, the date, whatever, and a few sentences, both for the kids to see, because a lot of adoptees really struggle with their identity and how do they belong and how do they fit in, but also with the goal that someday they would have a chance to meet their birth parents or extended families, you know, and two of our daughters are actually half siblings, and it turns out they have so many biological siblings, you can't even fit them on one family tree. But so that they could sit down with these photo albums and say, hey, look, this is my second birthday. This is when I crashed my bike and got a bloody knee. This was me, you know, with my little trophy for sports, or, you know, and then of course, Christmas is always magical. So one year early in the month, the kids said, wouldn't it be cool if Santa brought us so many presents? It stacked all the way up to the ceiling, you know, and we did not have a lot of financial means, but that year I took the biggest present and started stacking, and they just went straight up. There was one present and then straight up from there, and then a Nerf football squished at the top to keep this tower from toppling over, and got photos of it. And of course, the next morning the kids came out, and to this day, they still talk about it. You know, it's like, oh, do you remember the year we got so many presents?
That's awesome.
You know, it was, yeah. But the magic of the photographs, both for yourself, for extended family, for, you know, a lot of people post online nowadays. And so total strangers on the other side of the world see them. And for a lot of people, it can be very evocative or inspiring, like creativity. It's like, oh, I never would have thought of doing that. But hey, this gal in Utah can do it. How come I can't do it where I live?
Yeah, the possibility. It opens the possibility. Yeah, I like that. Oh, that's great. Thank you. That's a great personal example. Okay, well, we just have a few minutes left, so maybe let's return to those first two questions we started with, where what you've thought, what you have just kept thinking about through since reading this book, like what has stuck with you and stood out to you, if there are any more of those you want to share, or an example of something you've done differently since reading it, or you would now like to since reflecting on it with us tonight, like something that you feel inspired you might do a little differently in the next 3 weeks between now and Christmas for, the people in your circles. Any thoughts of how this is going to affect you tangibly this Christmas time?
I, for one, am going to for sure gift this book to a lot of people. I've actually thought about that. I think it will provide a really good gift.
Yeah, I think it would be a great gift. It's nice and short and readable. It's a beautiful cover. Kirk Richards did that beautiful painting on the front. Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's also a nice book to display with a nativity if you collect nativities. Oh, good gift for primary presidencies. Yes. How intentional I need to be with my family, with my time and family. Yeah, intentionality is really a big idea through this, isn't it? And then TB is sharing the quote, "The kingdom of God is hidden in plain sight." I think that's really a beautiful statement too, seeing it through the eyes of a child. Spending more time looking for on my own life, even beyond Christmas, Melissa points out, for sure. Like, this does not have to end December 26th by any means. Joyce says we've taken all the photos from our children's childhood and put them on a thumb drive so they can revisit the emotions of their childhood. Yeah, that's a profound gift, really, right? And TB says, I'm feeling a renewed call to try to look with eyes of awe. I think that's definitely something I've thought a lot about as well. And then Anna says, I'm so excited to take in the gift of the Savior with more awe every day. I've always been grateful, but awe is another level. That's a beautiful way to put that, Anna. I think that awe really is a bigger. It's a bigger kind of gratitude. Here's a quote that she's just put up here. This is from David F. Holland, who, if you aren't aware, is a professor at the Harvard Divinity School, and of course from a quite respectable, beloved heritage. His father is Elder Jeffrey R. Holland. His brother is Elder Matt Holland. And he says, Jesus is the gift through which all other gifts are made possible. This is from his book that the Maxwell Institute released a few years ago, a series called The Brief Theological Introduction of the Book of Mormon. And he wrote the book about the Book of Moroni, so the 12th in this series, and it is such an outstanding book. It's actually a really good partner to this book because he talks about gifts so much in it. And I just love that statement by David. Let's see, I had one other here that goes with it. He says, Jesus gives us both the power to choose and the ability to choose well, the capacity to see it all and the light by which to see it all. And again, it's seeing through those childlike eyes, like the incarnate Christ. And
hey guys, you want to go with me to get Callie and go see the Christmas trees?
Anyway, I think there's a lot. We could have spent the whole hour just talking about the incredible significance that Christ chose to take on a child's body and come to earth and be fully human while fully divine. We didn't even get into that, but that was a prominent theme throughout as well, and that's something to really ponder in awe and worshipful awe, just about the significance of his willingness to descend and condescend to take on a body. Holly, I see your request here. I'll put the quote in the chat maybe as we're wrapping up. I think Sarah or Anna is going to do some giveaways. Yep. So let's wrap up there. And I've loved the occasion to really do a deep study on this and share it with you ladies tonight. So thanks for being here. It's been a pleasure to be with you.